So greetings today. This is Todd Fitzgerald. I'm with the Cybersecurity Collaborative as the Executive in Residence and Chairman of the Executive Committee. I'm very excited to have this panel today and talk to you about some findings around security awareness training and how that has changed with the pandemic. And as we return to work, we have a different workforce today. What the Cybersecurity Collaborative did is brought together a large number of CISOs and under the leadership of Rich Rushing formed a task force to address this issue of how do we move forward with security awareness. Being that this is Cybersecurity or Security Awareness Month, the findings that have been accumulated are actually 25 different findings across technical, operational, and leadership and communications verticals to strengthen the way that we do security awareness training. So we're going to share some of those ideas with you today. We also make available to our members the full report of the 25 different items that the task force came up with to discuss. Not done by external research, done by CISOs that are actually living this and breathing this and what sort of recommendations that they have. So I'd like to go around quickly and introduce our panelists. To my top right, we have Jamie Hughes. Like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Jamie Hughes. I am the CISO for Progressive Leasing. Been in this role and a variety of others for many years, but never ending challenges. So happy to be on the panel today.
Glad to have you today, and thanks for participating on the task force. Benjamin?
Hi, Benjamin Corr. I'm the head of cybersecurity and data protection for Coates PLC. It's a UK-based company.
Thank you. And last but not least, in my lower corner here, Rich Rushing.
Yep. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Richard Rushing. I'm CISO for Motorola Mobility. I've been CISO now going on almost 14 years on that side of it that's there.
Well, great. Yeah, they haven't caught on to you yet, have they? Rich?
Nope, we keep changing owners, so that it works. It's a new company every 3 years, so it's the same.
Well, that's good. So, Jamie, let's start off. You know, when people are concerned about the state of the world that we're in and all the things that are going on with the pandemic, how do we keep, you know, security awareness at the forefront of their minds?
Interesting question. Definitely 2020 has brought many of those challenges to the forefront, more so than any other year. But at the end of the day, security is a risk in good times and in bad times. And we can't let our guard down. It's something that we've got to keep in the forefront of people's minds. And so in order to do that, training over time so that it becomes a natural way of thinking is important, and that they understand that risk. And you teach people how to protect themselves. Tools are great, but tools have flaws. People have flaws. And the more that we work with people to be prepared for that and understand those loopholes and understand how things work and defend themselves, the better we'll get. A few years ago, I actually worked for a company where I was sitting in my office and I heard one of my sales employees explain to a client about how they had been phished. So she got an email from them that was their email had been phished, and now it had sent out emails from their address book. She actually guided them through the process to help them understand that. And I'm just in my office celebrating because the training worked well enough that she could then turn around and teach others. So when the rubber hits the road and you need to practice those principles, it's good to see it pay off.
I'm sure that must have been gratifying to see the retention, and plus the fact that they were also becoming your security evangelist.
Yep. The more security goes viral, security protection goes viral, the better.
Absolutely. How about you, Benjamin?
I was just making sure I wasn't muted there for a second.
Okay.
But security
Benjamin,
is,
are you on mute? Are you on mute, Benjamin?
Oh, we got to take a shot now. That's no good.
really, people. Work with me here. But no, security is how do we keep it in the forefront of people's minds? It's already going to be out there. The news is keeping it in the forefront of the minds as well. So the board of directors are calling and saying, hey, are we secure? The executive staff are saying, are we secure? So as long as we're attentive to these questions, as long as we're answering the questions, and just making sure that we're staying out there ahead too. There's going to be a lot of misinformation. So we have to be consistent with our messaging as well. So it's not always us making sure that we get out there, because I also believe that there is a lot of questions that will be coming our way too.
How do you get that priority to, with all the other communications that are going out there, to make sure that your message is heard?
And that's going to be situational by situation, company to company, but it's building relationships as well. And it also comes down to what type of mechanism are you using to communicate? Is this going out from your internal communications team? Is it something that's going out from your HR team? Are you just sending it out? So you don't want to overwhelm with a bunch of messages that are going out there, because you do want it to be short and concise so people can digest it. But you do still want to put quality content out there without, again, overwhelming. So security is not the only topic that's out there. We're still talking health and safety as well, of how do we protect our people. So it's just working with the rest of the executives at your company of, these are the messages, these are what I would like to express. What can I tie in? What makes sense to tie in with other messages, and then what makes sense to be standalone too.
Excellent. Rich, what are your thoughts?
No, I think it comes back to, and everybody brought up on the excellent comments, situational functions. Again, people are working very differently in this arena, where off and on, and the normal ways of communication often get overwhelmed with the just sheer amount of email and notifications and things around that nature. So again, it's part of the sometimes less is more, but also if I can figure ways to target individuals directly and things around that nature, as well as Jamie pointed out, establishing a security culture that pretty much, when it goes viral and everything else, it feeds itself. There's not a lot of care and feeding that's done. It will spread throughout the organization, and that's kind of the end goal. Is you want to be, and especially in the world of work from home, these people really have to be self-sufficient in that idea, because all my infrastructure and everything else that I built, my walls around my castle, don't protect the villagers that are outside the castle wall now, and that's really the posture that we've moved to, and you really have to kind of, in some cases, rethink how you were doing stuff. But that also means, how do I communicate with these people so that I don't become a thing in the spam folder or junk mail or any of these other things that are out there? And I think that's one of the key areas that you really have to try to address directly, to see how things are that I can implement that will move that person to do something or react to something, or something that's important for us.
Yeah, good insight. I mean, you mentioned the whole, that we've moved out from that perimeter, and I know there were some technical pieces that were talked about in the report, where trying to mitigate things such as lateral movement, across with multi-factor authentication and other things. What were some of those things that you were putting in place for that?
So a lot of it was multi-factor authentication is a big one along those lines, but in a lot of cases, some of that was already implemented for us. So we looked at like how things were being done appropriately. In other words, how patches were being addressed, how communication was being addressed. And we typically had monitors in the office and things like that that we could post to get people to recognize, oh, okay, I need to go do this. I forgot that that was there, or a more broader distribution of stuff of, hey, let's take a look at our phishing trends and some of the other stuff, or attack trends that we would normally have in management meetings, SLT readouts, board of director stuff. Now with this, a lot of that is kind of, oh, it's not crazy important levels, let's hold off on that, on some of those, to the point of, well, yeah, we can send it out in emails, but who do we know that's read it, looked at it, Q&A that normally happens in those areas, and kind of takes the top-down approach to say, okay, this is important, and it'll filter down. And I think what we've discovered is that filter, that pathways are very much convoluted now and everything else. So it's not necessarily conducted at a staff meeting, or it's now virtual. It's not necessarily looked at on the email. So we looked and said, okay, how are we communicating that we now have lost these ways of communication? It would be similar to say, you've lost your way of your cell phone now. How am I going to call people, or how am I going to touch base with people to be able to do that? And that's where we started looking at different ways to do notifications, different ways to communicate to people. And again, some of the critical things, short and sweet, and understand that, yeah, you're going to have to send out not just one email, but probably a multitude of different avenues of communication to, oh, we want to put a banner on the portal now. We want to put, in some cases, so, hey, when you come in, here's where you go to. We want to put a portal on that to force that, so those users can see something will come up to them and say, oh yeah, I need to take care of this training, or I need to look at this. This is important. Those particular things I think are critical, is to say, I want to take, for lack of a better term, a shotgun approach to say, okay, I want to cover as many bases as I can with this communication, instead of the normal, hey, send a note to the person. If they don't take action, send a note to the manager. And if they don't take action, send a note to the next level manager. And by the time you get to the next level manager, they're like, what's going on? I have no idea. And that's no longer efficient levels of control, because you don't have all these other avenues.
Sure. So Benjamin, I know, it kind of leads, go ahead, Jamie.
Oh, I was just going to say, communication more so than tools was a lot of the challenge for us. We had the tools in place. In some cases, when we went into this pandemic mode, we pivoted the way we used the tools, and we failed to communicate well. And so it would trip a lot of security alerts, all the right alerts, all the right ways, but we needed to learn a lot more about communication and get much, much better through using our tools more appropriately, and using methods of communication instead of walking down the hall and communicating to that leader to pass the message on to their team. You needed to start using a lot more tools. So I would agree with Rich. Communication was a big challenge and still is.
Excellent. So Benjamin, along that vein, what sort of training, how did you present that training, and what sort of format did that training take?
No, that's perfect, because it really feeds into a lot of what Jamie's already said, and what Rich was already talking about. Is we sent people to, they're now working from home. They're no longer sitting, they're no longer just down the hall. So they're no longer having the same work experience. We can't just force everything into the LMS. I want everything going through our learning management system as much as possible, because it helps my metrics. And those metrics tell me if something's being effective. Well, it's a feed into metrics, whether they're being effective or not. But we're realizing that we need to engage more often. Security is going to be on that forefront. We wanted to stay on the forefront. So what we realized is, so that people don't feel that they're islands of one floating out there when they're receiving messages, are they more likely to be clicking on a phishing message now because they can't look over at their coworker who's sitting right next to them and say, hey, what do you think about this? This looks a little odd to me. What do you think? Because they don't have that second opinion. Maybe they're not going to forward that into the help desk because they don't want to make it official report, because they're just sitting there questioning it. Are they more likely to click on it? So we wanted to get out there and do a little bit more communication. So not everything being pushed through the LMS, but we started engaging people through emails. How many people read their emails? It's all contextual. If I read an email now, but I don't really experience it, do I remember the email from yesterday? So we've got, started communicating in internet message boards, the internal ones. We did employee surveys, company surveys. We did use the LMS, but then we also use like the login banners. Put a new message up there, or we would change the background when we updated our policies to say, have you seen the new policies that are out there? And used a different background for that as well. And then of course, on the internet pages with new banners and stuff. So we were just trying to do 7 different ways, same message communicated in several different ways, whether that's 7 or whatever, in order just to get in front of people so that they will see this is important. It's not coming via just one way. And then we talked with the leadership, with the managers, and in your team meetings, please remind your people of this. We still need that human factor to be there. We want people to be self-sufficient, absolutely. But then we still did say, please mention these things in your team meetings as well, for the leaders, for the executives as well.
So speaking of questions, it's good to have that avenue to ask questions, and we're going to be answering questions here live at the end of this. So as you have questions, please put those into the Q&A window, and we will get to as many of those questions as we can. But that's a very good point, and I think in terms of the phishing emails that. Many of our members were seeing increases in, phishing emails. What sort of phishing emails have you been getting through the pandemic, and has that quieted down, or are those increasing still?
Hey, I'll take the first stab at that.
I was like, everybody's like, okay.
Who wants to answer that one? I'm sorry to bring up a sore topic.
Well, volumes have increased, but also the complexity and the fish are getting much, much better. It is hard to detect some of them coming through. They're looking a lot more legit than they have in the past. So we have been increasing our own mock phishing campaigns to follow suit and help our people be prepared for that. But I think the hardest part is they're getting much more sophisticated and better at those fish than they used to.
Yeah, and I would like to build off of Jamie's comment. With the increase in sophistication and everything else, we are noticing on our side of it that the triaging of the fish and everything else is taking actually more time. Where before it was, hey, we can do things in 5 minutes. Now it's taking the team half an hour, 45 minutes of people's time. So you literally drop the number of investigations you can actually do for some of these phishing mails that are there. And yeah, according to the last one, I got terminated yesterday. Too bad I didn't know that. But those are the things that they're going on. They're really taking the social and psychological aspects of phishing to complicate on the fears that employees have and everything else that comes up. It's like, oh, look, it says termination, and there's an announcement, and I need to click on this link. It's really they're really stretching the bounds of this, which goes back to a lot of the training and awareness was always focused around hover over the link, look for misspellings or take urgent action, et cetera with that. Some of that's still in there, but some of it is no longer there. And those are becoming more and more prevalent to Jamie's side. We're seeing about a 300% increase in the phishing messages that are coming in, but the sophistication level of those phishing emails is actually very much increasing. If you were giving things a CVS score kind of before, there would be 1s and 2s. Now they're like 7s and 8s of where they're actually coming in and what they're actually doing, from ransomware to account manipulation to I'm stealing credentials, to the next stage of we're just trying to load software, et cetera, on that. So.
Yep. No, and I think the only thing I'll add on that is, volume, yes, complexity, yes. They look very, very legitimate. But what we're also seeing is some of our suppliers and some of our customers are calling us up or dropping us messages because they're fallen prey or victim to some of these business email compromises, to where it could be a similar domain, or it could be to where that person is getting an email asking them to change a bank account, and then they're calling us up and saying, hey, did you all send me this email? No, we didn't send you the email. And then as we help them with the investigation, we're finding out that one of their people clicked on a phishing message, lost their credentials, and then somebody, the attacker, went into their sent mailbox or into one of their mailboxes and crafted a really well-defined or really well-crafted message that then forwarded on to their finance team to saying, please change bank account information, or please process a purchase order or something like that. So it could be from a very similar domain, it could be from a legitimate domain, but when it comes down to it, it ended up being a business email compromise, and we were able to trace it back and help them, being the good business partner. But it didn't happen to us. We were just some of the ones that were referenced in it. So there's also been that aspect as well.
So with all of these new phishing emails and people working in remote environments, and who knows on what device they're working on, Jamie, how do we know whether what we're doing with security is actually working in awareness? I mean, I know that's always been an issue, but today, how do you even attempt to figure that out?
Yeah, you definitely need to measure it. One of the things our company does, we have an internal security page, and we look at the hit rate on the pages and what they're looking at and what the activity is. But being able to track that is important. Beyond that, like security awareness, I've been in groups where the opinion is we need to send out our annual training through our learning management system and check the box, if you will. I'm not a check the box person. I look at it as every moment that we ask a user to be away from their typical day job to take a dedicated training like that better be paying back so that security becomes part of their day job. So I do definitely look at the effectiveness of that, of right after I do any kind of training like that, am I tracking who took it? Am I tracking going forward areas of improvement? So if my fish rate in my mock phishing campaigns go down, or if the questions coming to the security team increase, which we always try to encourage, especially in this environment when many of us are remote, helping them feel like they can reach out. And one of the other things we did is we simplified how people can communicate to security. In the past, we had 4 and 5 different emails that they could reach out to different portions of the security team. When we went into this virtual environment, we simplified it to one email that gets routed on our side within the security team, just to keep it simple, but making sure that we're getting those results out of our efforts day to day.
Good tips. How do you strike that balance between how much to to mock fish or do the simulations, recognizing the workflow, issues, and everybody's trying to just cope at home. Have you had to like pull back on some of the, the phishing simulations, or how has that been working?
Because of the threat in the pandemic of some of these cyber attacks, we have only increased our phishing campaigns. But what we do is we have an awareness tracker that shows group by group how much time is being committed to different security awareness activities. And we track and measure that and communicate with the leaders in regard to that to make sure that it's right-sized. And it is a collaborative effort. Security doesn't make that decision on our own. We make that decision with the leaders and make sure it's a right balance. One of the most shocking things I had recently when I was meeting with one of our operations teams is they actually wanted to spend more time because they understood the threat and they wanted us to assign a few more classes out to their people so that they could do a better job of protecting the company, which is always a good sign.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, and one of the things we also did just to make people's lives easier is we already had a plugin in our Outlook. All you got to do is click on on the email. You click on the plugin, it automatically routes it to the security team, to the technology team, so that we can take a look at it. But once we published that last year, we saw a huge influx in reporting. Well, that's been dropping off. So we just reminded people of, this is a very quick and easy way for you to report. We were already seeing that the number of messages that were being blocked by, by the technology, we're seeing an increase. So we had to imagine that what people are getting in their mailboxes was increasing as well, because no system is perfect. But it wasn't until we re-emphasized the plugin that was there that then the numbers did start going back up. People remember, oh, this is out there again. Or we had people say, oh, that plugin disappeared. And this is, okay, so, Microsoft, maybe the add-in got disabled. These are the steps to re-enable that. And then what can I do via GPO to re-enable that for people? So, reminding people of the technologies that are available for them, because this, security is not their daily job. You've got accountants, you got people in HR functions, you got all of that. Again, security is not their bread and butter. So sometimes having a reminder of technology and things that we are doing for them to make their lives easier as well isn't a bad thing.
No, I definitely agree on that side of it, is that we have less time to get the attention of people. And like anything else, you used to say phishing didn't come every single day. So yeah, if you hadn't seen a phishing in 3 months, you're, I'm supposed to click on something, but I don't see it, or it's now off the page because we added another button on that side of it that's there. I think you can also take something. So we kind of been starting on a path of what we call progressive training, which is more around the lines of some of the other ones of looking at the risk and saying, when we know people have bad behavior, have somebody that, yeah, they don't have the best not clicking rate scenario, maybe we need to train them on some other things. Or we discovered that your system was infected with malware because you went to a bad site. Well, now we need to tell you how to know what a good site is versus a bad site. So we're creating these micro training packages to send out to folks. And then part of the thing that we also discovered was, how do I get help on this? We've been struggling on that of like, how do you reach out to people and they do it? So we've started some of the collaboration tools that you use, Teams, Yammer, Google Chat, we have them all. We started looking for some of these communities and then reaching out to the large communities and saying, can you either post this yourself from, like we call them unscripted videos, or information. Can you post this in your chat window to just, hey, people are there, they see this, oh, okay, yeah, let me click on this, this seems interesting. And then it gets to that versus coming through an email message or something around those. So we're trying, like I said, alternative ways to get in touch with people, just so that we can them to either take an action or look at some of the other capabilities, just simply from the aspect of we are seeing the decline, and we know that hey, there's two directions that are going. The attacks are getting increased, and the reliability and some of the users are going down. How do we shorten that gap that's between that? And communication is usually the first step in that key.
So what are you seeing, Rich? You know, are you seeing better compliance numbers before the work from home, or
No,
have they gotten worse?
It's gotten worse. And it's hard to know whether it's gotten worse just because people are really not as efficient as they want to be and everything else. So as you first started, when we first started the lockdown and we were measuring it, your compliance was almost even or reluctantly. As we kind of moved in past April and got into the later half of May and beginning of June, we started seeing it creep up, and it was kind of getting higher and higher and higher. And it wasn't the fact that people were not compliant. It was the kind of age-old fact, people were waiting to the last minute. So if I gave you a 2-week window to take a course, they would wait to day 14 to take the course. Because they keep getting reminders, and then another reminder, and then another reminder. Okay, fine, stop bugging me. But we're seeing that time differential keep stretching out, and it went from a day to 2 days to 2 weeks to a month, and now we're still seeing it creep up, even though we're trying to proactively move it down. And it's not just for security; it's with any kind of compliance or any kind of this is going to take an hour or 2 hour kind of scenario. People are like, I don't have that time. I can't do it. Or I'll do it in the afternoon and another call or emergency comes up, or what you're supposed to be doing does, or I've got family crisis issues. I've got to go fix my daughter's car, etc. Things happen and they directly affect your ability to deal with that.
Is there an increased tolerance for those numbers now, or?
We're trying to, we're increasing the tolerance rate, and we're still focusing around some of the stuff which used to be, hey, we'll just go to your manager and have him apply pressure, and he's like, hey, I have deliverables and I have other things. This is not the critical path, and they are kind of at the stage of like, we can't do any more than we're doing right now. On that side of it. So it is a balancing act, and you just have to figure out, it's like, okay, how do I make it so that it's there? And this is why we're trying to look at like the idea of the progressive training, is that, okay, if I can get this in 5-minute bites, the excuse goes away that, oh, I don't want to sit through 30 minutes of video on that side when I can be doing something else. And then it's back to the same thing, is people are not in the same platforms they normally are in. So how do I get to their desktop screen or their phone screen kind of scenario to get them to do something? Because a lot of times we looked at trends and everything else. People were taking training going into the office on public transportation or coming out on public transportation. That was a huge time when people were doing the stuff that was there. Now that doesn't occur, you kind of lost those 2 hours or 4 hours kind of time frame.
Yeah, I know. I have taken training on the train on a mobile phone just to see if I could. You know, of course, a lot of the trains don't have the Wi-Fi connection, so people need to, you know, they're doing them on their phones. But it was a nice thing on the way home. And I know, Jamie, you know, you were a big proponent of the 15-minute modules, and one of the task force recommendations was, you know, keep it small, you know, keep it, you know, on the devices that you know people have access to.
Yeah, path of least resistance. Keep it small, get the most bang for your buck in the limited time, but also make it fun. I'm also lucky enough to be part of a company culture that we have some teeth into our program where you do have to complete your security training or there are negative impacts to your bonus. And so we have stayed steady in a remote situation because those goals have stayed the same.
Yeah.
So, but
Well,
our
getting
tooling
fun
and
is
process. Yeah.
getting paid is kind of fun, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Kind of,
bonuses are
Show
great.
me the money.
Yeah, but we also
Yeah.
do different gift cards and we've had different videos that we've really changed up our LMS system to make the videos a little bit more engaging and, you know, not the same video you've gone through for the last 3 years.
Correct.
So that makes
Yeah.
a difference.
Have you found any difficulty in, you know, we're in these pandemic times and we're trying to do something that's fun, you know, where's that, have you struggled with like the line of, you know, some people are really suffering at home or may have, you know, challenging home situations, and we're trying to do this fun video. Has that been a conversation you've had to approach?
It has been a conversation we've had to approach, and we try to make sure we're sensitive to that. We work very closely with our HR team because culture is a big part of progressive leasing, and the way we really put people first is important. So always making sure you're sensitive, but even when you're going through a hard time, getting a gift card in the mail or an e-gift card in your email brightens your day, and it's actually does a lot to help keep spirits up and help them stay positive at the same time too.
Yeah, no, I think one of the other keys that we've actually had for some of the training has been news article kind of information. So a breach event occurs and something like that. And we did this with ransomware when Garmin got ransomwared up and actually had to stop services. We said, hey, perfect opportunity. And that was the most successful kind of single day kind of thing that people were going after, was like, oh, I heard about this on the news. Tell me what happened and tell me how to prevent it from happening to my company and organization. And that was really, we had a real huge engagement side of it and everything else. So we're trying to look for those kind of media things where people are hearing about it. It's in the news. Produce something really quickly, go through the approval process and get it out so that it's timely, and
Yes.
leverage that of just people's natural curiosity or their natural stuff that says, oh, I probably should look at that and see what's actually there.
No, and that's perfect. Earlier I said context. Context is king. And when something like that hits, people are looking around, they see it on the news, and are you able to take advantage? But you can't then take this and spend the next 3 weeks trying to perfect this message to get it back out there. Otherwise, they'll already have forgotten. It'll be old news. You're saying these are the actions we want you to take. There's been 3 weeks since then, and you know, they're like, oh, I don't even remember that, or it's such a vague memory for them at that point that they you know, throw that out there. One of the other things we're talking about, trying to make things fun. We're trying to add a little co-opetition, get some competition going, where you're going to land on a leaderboard and everything as well. We're trying to have little short videos, but I also have 13 languages I have to translate everything in. We are a global organization who, you know, has presence in many countries. So it's not just getting things out, but I've also got to get things out by you know, different languages. So it does take me time, you know, to, you know, Rich, I do want it to be timely, but I also, if I just send everything out in English, I'm hitting a quarter of my company, because the other 3/4, it's not even a second or third language, it's a no language. So I've got to get that out there. And it's one thing with newsletters, emails, I can get those translated fairly easily, but it's with the videos. So we're having to find the partners that we're working with that get us these little 5-minute videos that they will have the translations, even if it is just subtitles. Get me something that I can get it out there in a timely manner, help me get this quality content out and into the hands of my community.
Interesting. How are, with this pandemic, we also have some companies that are recruiting new staff as people are still come and go. How do we address the new employee piece, and is that a higher risk to our organizations right now?
There's actually a communication going on in the chat about the onboarding of new employees. Now, I can tell you our numbers, we haven't onboarded as many during pandemic mode, but the old process, they would go into new hire training, they would do a couple learning management system modules, they would do a couple face-to-face, they do some PowerPoint. Yes, I saw the death by PowerPoint. You don't want to overkill that. But when we went into pandemic mode, one of the big things that we did, because our new hire population was smaller, was we would actually pull a Zoom together, and I would be there to let them know security is very important to us as a company. We do mock phishing campaigns and other things like that. And give them a heads up and kind of quiet some of the noise that you'll get through. Hey, I have 26 learning management system courses to go through, and bring in that human factor of, hey, security is here and we're approachable, but we also need you to do your part. So it definitely caused a change in the way we onboard and how we get the messaging out there.
Sure.
And I think one of the interesting things of trying to get things that are there, especially with new hires and everything else, is parts of it is the social currency or the look inside the organization. Because we discovered that part of the courses and materials that we were marking as optional were actually higher looked at than some of the other ones, because people were interested, why is this optional? Why don't I have to actually take it? Maybe I should take it for that.
Interesting.
And then we also figured out that if we labeled something for managers, you had more employees taking it than some of the other folks that were actually taking it. So I don't want to classify it as manipulation or anything else, but it's active engagement with the people. What is going to trigger them to look at content, and how do I actually?
So maybe you need to title your next training "Top Secret Executive Training."
It's part of the thing. Same thing. And again, it's our culture. We're a culture of engineers. So anything that is derived around engineering or people will want to gravitate to that in that series of stuff that's there. They go, oh, well, I need to take that, but it's not listed in my growth program. So why is it over here? Well, I want to take it anyway because it's labeled for that. So we kind of play on that a little bit, and it has been actually successful. But that's different from every organization. But again, it's part of engagement, and content is the key. And now if you make it for managers and it's really boring, they will never take another manager's course again.
Yeah, no, very, very good point. Well, let's flip to our questions. And as we're going through these questions, if people have other questions, feel free to enter those into the Q&A chat, and we'll get to as many of them as possible. We have a question here from Tony. Recommendations on how to audit or ensure that an employee's home network and Wi-Fi configuration meets the organization's security requirements.
That's an interesting one. And we've kind of did partials of this, but being a global organization, we ran into roadblocks and things around that, so around privacy and everything else. So you can do training and send out notifications, and you have to come up with what standards you're trying to do? Is it that I need to, my Wi-Fi needs to be at least WPA2 or plus kind of scenario, that I turn off remote access to it? It's running the latest firmware and some of those. That is a complete training component. I will tell you, there are YouTube links for just about configuring secure configuration for any wireless access point that's out there and the model number that it actually is. There's a YouTube video somewhere that's there. So you don't have to recreate portions of the content. You can post on a link and leverage something that's actually there. But one of the ideas that we call back is that you can look at potentially their configurations on their laptops and seeing what they're actually connected to. And then you can find out that, do I need to send this to everybody, even the people that are connected, or should I send this just to the people that are doing it in security? And so in your standard Windows, Mac configuration, there are settings that tell me everything about all the access points that I've connected to, even on your phones. And it tells me the security levels that they are actually at. So you can see by time and effort of, okay, this is the one they're using for the office, this is the one they're using for home, and this is this stuff. They're still connecting to Linksys with nothing that's actually there. Even the IP address ranges are default configuration for some of the cases. So we started on that avenue and to try to address the people that were doing it incorrectly, and pointed them to places to do it. And that actually been a pretty progressive uptick in people actually going out and wanting to do those configurations. Just know that you are in a world, because we said, yeah, this is great. And then all of a sudden they're like, my Nest camera doesn't work, or you broke this, or this is now broken, or my Lenovo clock no longer gets sync, or these other things. And then you had to go back, oh, you need to reset all those, and how that's actually gone into place. And I think that bad impact is one of the things you really have to be careful with, because they're going to come back, and now desktop support's now talking about how to fix this problem.
I know some of the people on the task force were indicating things like, having the DMZs and VPN configurations, using user behavioral analytics. And I know, Ben, I think you had brought up the using VDI as like an initial solution, until you could get them to on a corporate machine that was actually more secure than their home PC would be on that.
No, absolutely. Virtual desktop instances is a good way, because then my data is going to be protected as well. But it's also proper monitoring as well. So you can do the things, you can do these suggestions with the YouTube videos, which is a fantastic way, because you're not recreating things. And it's value add. They feel that you care because you're giving these suggestions. So we did those sorts of things, but then we also looked at making sure we were timely on the monitoring of the endpoints. Do we see a lot of attacks coming, being detected by our EDRs and our antivirus on, person A's home network? Then we need to reach out to that person. Do they just have a curious teenager in the house who, mom or dad's now working from home, I'm, pinging this laptop to see what's going on. And make sure network discovery is not on, and this is working with them, because they could turn network discovery on because they want to connect to their home printer, and then every other system on that network is able to. So it's what is your risk tolerance? What is your risk level that you're willing to engage with? And then you just have those communications, and also have that human factor. I told you earlier we use some VDI instances, and even when we ship some systems to people, here's a Chromebook. You can use this Chromebook when you're going to do corporate things. You use the VDI, fire up, either use the app or use the browser. But if you want to, have your child, because you have multiple kids, you only have one home machine. If you want your child to use this machine now, it's not going to impact more corporate business. It's a Chromebook. It's, it's a pretty stable system as well. So go ahead and let one of them use this machine as well when you're not working. And then that comes down to, again, the human factor of understanding that that person may not be as productive from 9 to 5 like they used to be, but they're working when their kids aren't working because they're having to homeschool or home educate or whatever, things they've never done before. So there's also, we've talked a lot about, the work from home, changes that we have a different workforce. We also have to understand that we also have humans that are working from home for us. We change our policies, we change our procedures, but we also have to have some tolerances here to make sure that our people still feel valued.
And I think it's a very good perspective. And we're going to answer the rest of these questions here. And while we're doing that, what I'd like to do is, and I'll get to you in a second there, Rich. We just want to bring up 3 poll questions for everybody that we'd like you to ask, but we're going to continue for the next couple of minutes. We will end at the close of the hour, so we will not go over, so you can make your next meetings. But we just have 3 questions for you. So if you could answer, did you find this virtual briefing valuable? Rich, you had a comment?
Yeah, no, I was telling, one of the things we discovered is kind of the old Intel Inside marketing banner, that if you tell people that this will increase the performance of the video conferencing software of your choice, actually you get a lot better functionality of that. Whether it does or not is questionable, but it's the same thing. If you want your kids not to be able to impact your bandwidth, you change your security key, they're not on your Wi-Fi network, and lo and behold, you got plenty of access that's available. But we discovered that that title and the messaging is actually very critical and key. So be innovative around that.
Very good. Very good. We have another question here that came in from Scott. Is there any feel for the size of organization versus frequency of training? If the org is 10,000 people, it is more likely to accomplish minimally a quarterly training regimen with intermittent phishing training or something else. Is it more likely to accomplish a quarterly one or with intermittent testing? So what sort of frequency are you doing this?
I don't think it matters necessarily based on size. Especially with all of the learning management system tools and things that we have out there. But I think it's more a matter of knowing your people and how they need to be communicated to. Some people, based on their role, they're higher risk and they need it more often. Some people are lower risk, like maybe you decide that certain people in your organization don't have access to email, then there's no reason to flood them with phishing training, right? So you have to modify that style to who your people are. I recall in my history, I one time had an engineering group that they would resist the security awareness training. And, it was a typical PowerPoint deck at that point in time. And I went home that night after getting some feedback of, the training's boring, I don't like it, it's the last thing I want to do. And I wrote up a gamification tool in which our training awareness for security became a house. And each room of the house was one of the things that they needed to complete. And it was a game. And when you completed, so when you hadn't done the course, it would be red. And when you'd done a portion of the course, it started to be yellow. And then the light would turn green when you were done. And each room they had to complete. And quickly it became, in that organization, it became, is your house in order? Meaning your house had turned all green. My house is in order. Is your house in order? It's just knowing your people, and everybody has different styles. When you have a huge group, you need to think about how do you get it out quickly, but it shouldn't change the frequency. The risk should change your frequency.
No,
and while we're answering our last question here, we have our last poll question of, are you interested in becoming a member of the Cybersecurity Collaborative? Rich?
No, I think the interesting points, and I think one of the key things around this is, I think a lot of old school LMS, and that's why we had annualized training, was so hard to get data out of it. It would go, and you would always have these people that the annualized training was in some month, and you would have the new hire that just took the training, now had to take the training again to get onto the side of it that's there. I got to suffer through this twice. On that side, now with the LMS, they trail. It's like new hires. Here's your new training date. You got to take all these courses before 30 days that are there, and that's your annualized date. So instead of having November 1st as being our massive training day, everybody's got to take training by this. It's scattered amongst the world, which if you're trying to collect metrics, you really have to know how to collect those to be able to trend those correctly. But it's back to the same thing. Most of the time now is it doesn't matter that you have to annualize anything. You can do it with what your culture of your organization can handle. And if theoretically, if you can push things monthly, you could actually do that as well as part of the areas that are there, if it was in a small, concise package and been able to be delivered appropriately.
Sure. Good response. So I've got one last question for you. We'll just take like 30 seconds each and we'll wrap up here. So Jamie, I'd like to start with you. What are the future directions for the work for home office? What do we see this in the context of security awareness training?
So, honestly, when we moved to work from home, we didn't make a lot of changes to our environment. Now, we had some users who only had machines that were in the office, and we had to deploy a bunch of laptops, so that changed. But one of the big principles I preach from a security perspective is we were already traveling. We were already working from home at nights and in mornings and off and on. So it's just a matter of practicing those same principles from a security perspective, regardless of where you are. Those things still apply. So whether you're working from home or you're working from Hawaii, it is still those same principles apply, and we need to keep up with that. We did do some changes in regard to performance and availability and communication, but the security pieces were actually pretty similar.
Very good perspective. Benjamin, 30 seconds. What do you got?
I can take it in 30 seconds. The only thing I'm going to add to that is we were already remote friendly. We were already set up being global. People traveled country to country. So again, a lot of people were already used to this. The only change is going to be for those who were not used to that, who had the desktop, who had that. They're now going to be kept more mobile friendly. So we're having more training with them or awareness for them for the OPSEC. Understand when you're not at home, when you are in a coffee shop, don't leave your phone on a table to reserve when you go jump in your line to buy your cup of coffee. Understand who's around you when you're having conversations. So a lot of the training that we're adding that I think contextualize their understanding now why we had those type of conversations in the past. That's what we're adding for them going forward. Because again, we don't expect everybody to just shift back to always being in an office again.
Great. And Rich and everybody, this report is available on the member portal on cyberleadersunite.com after the session. So Rich, why don't you take us home here?
Sure. No, I think it's part of the thing. I think, and in some cases you'll see it trailing on this year, is becoming permanent. We've gone from, hey, this is a temporary thing, to there's a portion of the population that will never ever return to the office that's there. And great points around the context. Where are you at? You're much safer at home in some cases than you are at a Starbucks or a hotel in those sides of it that's there for bad things that have happened. And I think that awareness and some of that needs to be that. Mm-hmm. I think it also goes back to change your posture because now it's permanent. Now I have to say, these machines are outside my castle walls and they need additional levels of protection and things around it. as they would be, they have to defend themselves.
Yep.
You can no
Right.
longer require work on the castle walls and everything else to defend it. They really have to defend themselves. So they should be configured in such a way that they can defend themselves, and that like admins taken away and some of the other things that you're gonna run into that you would not necessarily say, hey, it's only gone for 2 days, it's back in the office at that point.
Yep. I think that's a great place to end it, thinking about that castle wall and how we don't have that anymore. So thanks everybody. Thanks for your participation on the task force and putting this great document together around security awareness and what we need for the future. So thank you very much, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks everybody for listening.
Thank you. Stay safe.